The notorious Ted Bundy was one of America's most evil serial killers as he kidnapped, R-worded, and took the lives of dozens of young women and girls during the 1970s. Around 10 years later, a copycat killer did the same disgusting things just across the pond in Japan. This sick man's name was Tsutomu Miyazaki, also known as the Otaku Killer, and he is one of the most infamous serial killers in Japanese history, as he's responsible for taking the lives of 4 prepubescent girls in the same twisted manner as Ted Bundy. However, the Otaku Killer took it a little bit further than Ted Bundy, as he also sadistically cannibalized some of his victims. But how did it all get to this point? This is the story of the Japanese Ted Bundy, the Otaku Killer, Tsutomu Miyazaki. Tsutomu Miyazaki was born on 21 August 1962 in Itsukaichi, a small mountainous town near Tokyo, as the son of a wealthy family. He had 3 siblings, an older sister and 2 younger sisters. His parents operated a fairly successful regional newspaper company in Japan. The family was well known and even respected in their community. Tsutomu's parents were very busy running the newspaper, so he was basically raised by his grandfather. Because of this, he and his grandfather were quite close. Tsutomu was born premature and with a birth defect, a condition where his wrists and hand joints were fused together in such a way that he couldn't bend his wrists upward. There were rumors that the cause of this defect was the incestuous relationship between his father and older sister, so this means that the rumor is that his older sister is his real mother. His family considered surgery to help fix his deformed wrists and hands when he was 4 years old, but he was told that even with surgery, only about 1 in 100 cases would see recovery. Since he was still growing, it was advised that the family wait before going ahead with it. While Tsutomu's parents were too busy to be true parental figures, they were still very strict on how he was raised. They put a lot of pressure on the timid and introverted youngster to perform very well in school and be successful, because they wanted him to work for the newspaper that they owned when he finished his studies. Even though his deformity made school difficult for him because he was ostracized by fellow pupils, he still managed to pass his classes with good marks. He, however, mostly kept to himself, and instead of working for the newspaper, his dream was to become a teacher. Tsutomu was really good at math, and his mother even bragged about how good his English was, which apparently he learned from writing code, which is quite impressive for a child. Tsutomu was notoriously bad at social studies, which may have served as a form of real-life foreshadowing. He joined his middle school's track and field team and even became part of the shogi club. Shogi is a Japanese form of chess, and he took this very seriously, as he constantly read up on strategy guides so he can ensure he won all his matches. He became obsessed with shogi, and if he ever lost a match, it would play on his mind for days and cause his deep-rooted issues to show. Despite his activities in school, his mental instability was growing. Even though he was doing a lot at school, his behavior didn't make him more popular with the students and instead made him seem more odd. His stellar academic performance didn't last very long, as his grades began to drop when he attended Meidai Nakano High School in Nakano. This high school was prestigious since it was associated with Meiji University and would have been his ticket to the future that he wanted, but he ranked 40 out of 56 in his class, disqualifying him from admission to Meiji University, which was his dream. This broke his heart, but as a result, he joined a junior college and studied to become a photography technician. Here, his dark side started to show when he began taking crotch shots of female tennis players he liked to watch. At around the same time, he also became obsessed with adult magazines. This was his introduction to all of his wild fetishes and kinks, as he began to dive deep into the seedy world of underground adult videos. Concerningly, Tsutomu then began to watch and get obsessed with CP. Tsutomu's obsession with CP was something that expedited the deterioration of his unhealthy mind. Tsutomu wasn't only obsessed with videotapes of CP, but he also began to collect videotapes of various other things, from anime to gory horror movies. He was obsessed with his videotape collection. He even began to record his own personal footage to add to his videotape library. After Tsutomu finished school, his uncle got him a job at a printing press, but he sucked so bad at it that he got a bad reputation. He was terrible at communicating with his co-workers, and the boss decided to get rid of him by transferring him to another location. He took this opportunity to quit instead and moved back into his parents' house in the mid-1980s. During this time of his life, he felt that he was rejected by his sisters and only ever received any kind of support from his grandfather. At this time, Tsutomu was suicidal and his grandfather was the only one who could make him feel better. He didn't bother talking with his parents because he felt like they were more worried about materialistic things than him, and he felt that they would have simply ignored him if he looked to get any support from them. He often chose to stay in his room for days on end without talking to anyone. He would only go out to collect the mail as part of his chores. There was nothing that Tsutomu did or enjoyed apart from obsessing over his VHS collection filled with CP, anime, and horror films. Things only went from bad to worse when his grandfather, the only member of his family that he was actually close with, passed away in 1988. This absolutely shattered his world and heart, and he sank into a deep depression. This is widely seen as the tipping point for him, because after his grandfather passed away, it broke him so much that he tried to retain something from him, and he actually ate part of his grandfather's ashes just to feel him one more time. He was clearly losing his mind, and he sunk deeper into a life of degeneracy. A few weeks after his grandfather died, Tsutomu did something that was very weird, as while his sister was taking a shower, he tried to sneakily watch her. His sister caught him in the act and she freaked out and told him to leave, but feeling embarrassed at what had just happened, Tsutomu physically attacked her like a savage. When his mother learned of what happened, she blamed his lewd and incestuous behavior on his sister on his massive, disgusting videotape collection, which she demanded that he spend less time with, and instead he must spend more time working. This angered Tsutomu, causing him to brutally attack his own mother. No one could understand him, and his obsession with videotapes of CP, horror films, and anime became more and more intense. His collection grew, and as his taste began to get more and more twisted, his behavior became more strange. His unhealthy obsession with collecting videotapes led him to gathering nearly 6,000 VHS tapes consisting of CP, horror, anime, and much more degenerate things. Tsutomu's mind was officially lost, and 3 months after his grandfather's passing on August 22, 1988, he committed his first horrific murder. Mari Kono, a 4-year-old girl, was playing at a friend's house. He lured her into his black Nissan Langley and then drove to a bridge. Stopping underneath it to be out of view, he talked to the little girl for half an hour before he brutally strangled her. After noticing that she was missing, her father immediately started looking for her and contacted the police, but she was long gone. The sicko then went on to viciously R-word the child's corpse before he dumped it in the hills close to his house. He took her clothes with him as a sick memento. The little girl's body was left to decompose, but Tsutomu returned to it after a while. He proceeded to remove her limbs, which he kept as trophies in his closet. In total, he removed her hands, feet, teeth, and bones. After this, he burned what was left of the child. He put the ashes in a box, as well as some of her teeth, which he then sent to her family. Attached to this disgusting and disturbing package was a postcard, and written on the card were the words, Mari, bones, cremated, investigate, prove. He later sent more postcards, and all of them were signed with an alias that he created, named Yuko Imada. As if that wasn't bad enough, he also called the family repeatedly, not saying anything but creepily just breathing heavily into the receiver. 2 months later, on October 3rd, 1988, Tsutomu claimed his second victim's life. He spotted 7-year-old Masami Yoshizawa on the side of a rural road. He stopped his car and offered her a ride. The naive little girl accepted the seemingly friendly man's offer and he sped away, driving her to the same location that he took his previous victim. He murdered Masami, R-worded her corpse, and then took her clothes before leaving her behind naked. Fortunately, if that's even the right word to use here, no reports were found to indicate that he mutilated her body. Tsutomu was still on his evil hunt though, and just 2 months later, on December 12th, 1988, he once again took to the streets looking for his next victim. He was driving along when he saw Erika Namba, a 4-year-old girl walking on the side of the road. Instead of offering her a ride, he chose to simply force her into his car before speeding off into a parking lot in Saitama. There, he forced the little girl to remove her clothes in the backseat and started taking photos. Erika started to grumble and gave him what he would describe as quote-unquote that look. It was the same look of hatred and disgust that his own sisters gave him, and this infuriated Tsutomu. Once the scared child started to scream, he kicked her in the chest area. He then strangled her to death. He tied her hands and feet behind her back, covered her lifeless body with a bedsheet, and put her in the car's trunk. After this, he drove off and threw away her clothes, and he left her body in an adjoining parking lot. Since the corpse was in a parking lot, it was found 3 days later. Her father appeared on TV, stating that he was at least happy that the police had found his daughter's body. This prompted Tsutomu to sadistically send the family a postcard on 20 December, this one with the words, "Erica, cough, cold, throat, rest, death." On June 6, 1989, he found a 5-year-old girl named Ayaka Nomoto in a park near a tennis court and convinced her to let him take some pictures of her. After he took a few photos of Ayako, he told her that they should take some more photos of her in his car. The little girl agreed, not knowing the intentions of Tsutomu, and she followed him into the back seat of his Langley. As soon as he got her into his car, he started to strangle her, and after 4 or 5 excruciating minutes, the little girl finally passed away. Tsutomu then taped her mouth shut, tied her hands, wrapped her in a bedsheet, much like he did with his previous victim. It looked like he was starting to work out his preferred modus operandi. However, this time he didn't leave the body to be found, but took it to his house instead. For 2 days, he recorded various tapes of himself R-wording the deceased girl's body until it started to decompose. He also took many photos. When the body wasn't fresh anymore, he chopped it into pieces and disposed of it in a nearby cemetery in the hills close to his house. He strangely kept her hand, which he started to eat pieces of, and he also drank her blood. A few weeks later, he became paranoid about the body's placement in the cemetery, fearing it would be too easy to find. He then returned, gathered the pieces and stored them in his closet. With all of his victims, this psycho would continue to harass the victim's family with postcards, in which he basically confessed to murdering the little girls. Tsutomu was a truly sick individual, but luck would soon run out for the serial killer turned cannibal. On 23 July, luck would run out for the now serial killer and cannibal. He found 2 young girls who were playing together in a park in Hachioji and set his greedy, disgusting sights on them. He was able to get one of them to follow him, while the other managed to escape. He took the obedient girl to a more private area and asked her to take off her clothes while he took pictures. It's also reported that the sick killer tried to insert a zoom lens into a private part. Luckily though, the father of this girl began searching for his daughter and caught Tsutomu taking pictures of her. The father was surprised to find out that he had caught the serial killer who prowled on little girls, realizing that his daughter would have very well been the next victim. The rightfully angered father began beating the living daylights out of Tsutomu. Tsutomu was able to slip away and run off on foot, leaving his car behind. The police were called and a couple of plainclothes policemen waited around the car for him to come and collect it. He did, and he was swiftly arrested. After his arrest, the police found his collection of VHS tapes, which were alarming enough because there was CP, truly gory films, and questionable anime. With all the manga and anime found in his place, he was given the name of the Otaku Killer, but he was also called the Little Girl Murderer. Authorities also found the tapes he had recorded of his sexual assaults and murders. Even worse, the decomposing body parts were found. When all of the evidence was found, he was surprisingly unfazed by all of this and even commented on the fact that he liked horror films. Just a few months later after he was caught, the police were able to find the rest of the bodies with Tsutomu guiding them. His name was made public at this point and the media reported on the horrible crimes he committed. There was a massive media frenzy when they found out that Tsutomu was an otaku. The media wasn't concerned with his mental health but zoomed in on the aspect of his life and created a stigma surrounding fans of anime and manga. The media focused on his collection of horror movies, anime, and manga, and also pointed out that he was obsessed with these things and also was a heavy consumer of CP. It actually became a complete circus, with some shows being taken off the air and others censored or heavily edited in the following years. Before this, people already felt like video games, manga, and anime were negatively affecting youngsters, especially young men, and the whole case with the Otaku Killer just proved them right. His behavior also made many people question the way young girls are portrayed in media, especially in manga and anime where young girls are fetishized very frequently. Adult material got heavily censored as well, and many manga series were edited to show less skin, and some were completely cancelled. Horror films also came under scrutiny. In terms of horror movies, there was a lot of negative press, and TV channels began to self-censor content and cut back on the number of horror movies they broadcasted. After Tsutomu's arrest, his family endured harassment for years. One of his sisters was abruptly dumped by her fiancé, leading to the cancellation of their marriage plans. His other sister was in nursing school, but she also dropped out, and it's been reported that it was out of harassment. Tsutomu's father decided to liquidate all of his assets, which included his home, car, and business, and gave the money to the families of his son's victims. After doing this, Tsutomu's father did the unthinkable because of shame, and he took his own life when he jumped off of Jindai Bridge. His mother went on to live in secrecy, and even his uncles divorced their wives in order to save their reputation. The once successful newspaper was shut down, and the areas connected to the case were either blocked off by the government or destroyed. Tsutomu's actions basically destroyed the lives of his entire family because their reputations were in the dirt, and they could not shake off the shame and public harassment due to what their son did. While in custody, he ate and slept well, not showing any feelings of guilt or regret. When asked what his reasons for the murders were, he stated that he didn't know. While in custody, he started drawing a character that he called the Rat Man. He claimed that it was the Rat Man who was to blame for the murders, acting like it was an alternate personality of his. He would even speak in third person, saying things like Miyazaki is not a killer. Tsutomu's drawings became rather well known, and he made many of them. Being legally insane would have had the court find him unaccountable for his crimes, so a number of tests were done to understand his mental state. 2 doctors found that he had schizophrenia, and 2 others called it dissociative personality disorder. Apparently, they had found a total of 4 personalities, which all lacked determining good versus bad, which resulted in him not being fully sane. He was asked if he ever tried to question or stop his other self, and he found the idea strange. According to him, his other self was the one committing the crimes and eating human flesh. This description was found suspicious because it doesn't match up with how schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder is believed to work. Tsutomu also claimed that he saw the Rat Man about 3 or 4 times, and when the Rat Man came out, the girls would fall over and lose consciousness. He insisted that he never killed anyone, and it was definitely the Rat Man. However, despite his mental state, he was determined to be capable of understanding the consequences of his actions. Because of this, he was deemed fit for trial. His trial started on 30 March 1990. Tsutomu's father was so upset with the crimes his son committed that he refused to pay for an attorney for him. During the trial, his story jumped between lies, the truth, and even superstition. It was understandably difficult for his defense attorney to convince anyone that he didn't deserve a harsh penalty. Tsutomu was denied the insanity plea and sentenced to death on April 14, 1997. In Japan, the death sentence is done by hanging. Inmates on death row are not told the date of their execution until the day it's scheduled to happen. When the day comes, the inmate is taken to a room with a priest, and they are also given the chance to write a will. When it's time for the death sentence to be carried out, a bag is placed over the criminal's head, and 3 policemen line up at their buttons. When given the signal, the policemen press the buttons at the same time, not knowing which of them is committing the sentence. Tsutomu was hanged in the Tokyo detention house in 2008. Yes, that's how long it took for this case to be truly closed. The many psychiatric tests played a big part in why things took more than a decade to conclude. No one knows what his last words were, but there are rumors that he told his psychiatrist to tell the world that he was a good person. Upon his death, his mother was contacted and the Tokyo detention house offered her his ashes, but she refused, and like a savage, she said she'll leave the cleaning up to them. Since Tsutomu's case, several copycat killers followed, and some of them claiming to be the next Tsutomu Miyazaki. He became sort of an idol for other killers in Japan. This was probably because the case became such a media obsession that there's an endless amount of material on the case, like books, theories, articles, and YouTube videos. The rabbit hole is just endless. Despite all of this, Tsutomu was an evil and sick individual who should not be praised no matter what for what he did. Another person who should not be praised for what they did is Tatsuya Ichihashi, who dressed up as a woman to get away with the murder of a young British girl in Japan. If you'd like to watch this video, click the video on screen now. Thank you for watching.